Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Dan and Amy, Joe Biden. We're broadcasting live from Woodland Windows and Doors. I'm so excited to get to the Biden story. Woodland Windows and Doors in Roselle, part of our AM 560 Signature Bank business tour. We just talked to the brothers who run this joint, the Mariottis. Great company, doing very well.
And a lot of listeners stopping by, George and Joe, and what's your Dan? Jim. Naomi.
Nobody does crowd work like you.
And don't leave me. Leave it up to me to pronounce names either.
Yeah,
okay.
Like Mike and Jim and Dan. Yeah,
those are very hard names.
There's no question. But it's great to be here.
Thanks for stopping by.
And Joe Biden, not out of the woods yet. He has committed to listen respectfully to anyone who disagrees that Eskimo kissing women you don't know is inappropriate. So he's willing to hear you out on that point, Amy. He can't help it. He loves people, and he likes to express himself.
You don't get in people's personal space by nose kissing. You do that to a newborn baby or something. You don't do it to grown women. That's a little gross. Because then maybe he's just seeing if that'll lead to something else. I mean, I'm not saying, but I'm just saying.
After Ms. Flores recounted her tale in Nevada 5 years ago, the other day, we had another second woman come forward. Her name, Amy Lapos, telling a newspaper in Connecticut about her interaction with Joe Biden at a fundraiser for a local congressman back in 2009. It wasn't sexually, but he did grab my head. He put his hand around my neck and pulled me in to rub noses with me. Oh. When he was pulling me in, I thought he was going to kiss me on the mouth, and her life flashed before her eyes. That's my parenthetical.
That's your
yeah.
Well, ladies on The View, they're victim shaming, and this is after the first person came forward, not the second person, but they're defending their man Biden.
And see, that pisses me off. Yeah. I'm telling you, because I don't want Joe to stop doing that.
I don't either.
You know,
I'm just going to say one thing really quick.
Go ahead.
There's a certain kind of retail politician that loves people. I would put Bill Clinton in that category. I would put my father in that category. I would certainly put Joe Biden in that category. When he came on this show, he's the only politician, other than my father, to go into the crowd and shake everyone's hand.
True. Yeah.
Now, that means something when you're in Iowa. And I'm sorry, but when I heard this, I read her entire statement. I do agree women should be heard. I'm sorry. Yes. I worked at Fox News during the Roger Ailes time. There's a very big difference between things like that and things like this. And Mika Brzezinski said this morning, Democrats, you have to ask yourselves, what exactly is the Me Too line you want to draw? Because you will live and die by that line. Joe Biden is a good, decent man. I do not believe he has never made me feel uncomfortable once. I've been around him a lot.
So can we conclude that it would not hurt him?
Like
I hope not, but I think Democrats, what I said on Friday about Democrats cannibalizing each other and eating their own, and the part you brought up about politics, she said...
Done with Meghan McCain yet? Oh, good grief.
Well, they went on for a whole other hour.
Nonsensically. I do accept Meghan McCain's apology because what she said is idiotic, but it is ironic because I don't think Joe Biden wants to be put in the same category as Bill Clinton.
Exactly.
So I don't know how much...
touchy-feely politician.
I don't know how much help Meghan McCain is offering there, but I know that Joe Biden has all kinds of trouble in the modern era and the Democrat Socialist Party. And I agree. I think Rich Lowry, we talked to earlier in the show, is even coming around to agree with his own columnist, Kyle Smith, and me, that Joe Biden was over it. I think his prospects for being a candidate were tenuous to begin with, a successful candidate at least, just as he was unsuccessful 30 years ago and then 20 years after that. Yeah. And because he just doesn't look as good or sound as good, and he doesn't get the insulation when he's not standing next to Barack Obama. So too bad for Joe. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by NRO columnist John Fund, who also has a provocative piece on our friend Steve Moore. John, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Can we get a vote by acclamation here that Joe Biden is done?
It's a long, slow, lingering death, but there will be a timed-release capsule of accusations every few days on this until it just mounts to where it dominates his candidacy.
Really? The selfish part of me, I want him to announce that he's running for president. I want him, to challenge Bernie Sanders. He still will announce, you think?
He's stubborn, yes.
Okay.
What about David Blaine? He's also accused of sexually assaulting two women. Will he be announcing for the Democrat nomination for president as well?
listen, 30 people are running. There's room for more.
Yeah, of course, particularly given the standards. What is your handle on Beto, Robert Francis Frost there, the poet laureate of the Democrat Socialists? He is it's interesting the reaction he's getting and from which quarters, including from the Atlantic, that's very skeptical. The Atlantic in particular has been very skeptical of Beto, essentially saying he's all hat, no cattle. That when is his fundraising prowess going to translate into actual political momentum? Very skeptical of Beto, and I don't quite understand why.
Well, everybody who knows him knows that he's extremely charismatic. He's the modern incarnation of Robert Kennedy at 6'4", and they're hoping that something that bright and shiny will have something deep and substantive underneath, and we're still waiting for it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no there. He lives in El Paso, born and raised there, went to El Paso High School and wants to tear down the walls there. And yesterday he mentioned that he wants to break up America's wealth, that he wants to take more from the rich and give to the poor.
And he also says that we have a racist capitalist system, and he's apologized for his white privilege. And, I mean, he's genuflecting in all the right corners of the Democratic Party, but I think that they don't view it as sincere.
I mean, this is very early on, so it's difficult to handicap, I understand, but there's enthusiasm and money being raised by Beto, by Bernie, probably still could be by Biden, by Reparation H there, Kamala Harris. Do you see anybody of that second tier that could jump to the first tier before the summer is out?
Well, yeah. I mean, remember, the first primary is the media primary. And the media primary is always won by an obscure candidate that the media love and vaunt into that first tier. And Pete Buttigieg seems to be the one to do it. I mean, he's impressive, got a great resume, and he's raised $7 million coming from South Bend. That's real cash.
I mean, 100,000 people live in that town, and he's raised, a fair amount of money. What do you think it's about him that's attractive to people?
Well, he doesn't sound like a politician. He's obviously mastered retail politics running for mayor. He's the only open gay in the race, and that brings in money, attention, and sympathy from the media. And he does a very good job cultivating the media. He's going to win the media primary.
That's really interesting, although the hatred of Notre Dame, I think, around the nation is going to hurt him. I think that's going to translate. Switching gears, my favorite economist joke. You ready? You ready for my favorite economist joke?
I'm ready.
Wait, how's it go again?
Take your time.
Yeah, I want to tell it right.
Words are hard, I know.
Economist jokes are very difficult to tell. You have to tell it just right. If you laid every economist in the world end to end, they couldn't reach a decision.
Hey-o. Do you think that's funny?
No, I don't. But it's difficult to tell economist jokes. John Fund, you wrote a piece about our friend Steve Moore, who we had on the show last week, talking about his recent nomination to the Fed Board of Governors and the heat that he's taking, first by his Nobel Prize-winning troll, Paul Krugman, and now sort of just generally in the D.C. press corps, from those who don't like that he doesn't have the proper academic credentials. He doesn't have a PhD in economics. He isn't plotting supply and demand curves on a daily basis and so forth. And you rallied to the defense of Steve. Why?
Well, most of what you just said is not only wrong but preposterous. Jerome Powell, who happens to be the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board, doesn't have a PhD in economics and isn't an academic. And most of the chairmen of the Federal Reserve's board in its history haven't been economists or PhDs. So, I mean, this is clearly a smokescreen for what they're really scared of. The Fed is so insecure, and the Fed supporters are so insecure that someone will actually show up and debate the chairman and actually be in dissent and actually promote economic growth and actually challenge their economic models, which were so wrong in predicting the 2008 recession. And so wrong in predicting whether or not interest rates should be raised in 2019. The Fed has already reversed course on that. They said they were going to raise them twice in December. Now they admit that's a mistake. They're so insecure, they've got to keep the heretic out of the castle.
Can you imagine how much fun it would be if it was Steve Moore and Herman Cain on that board? What a free-for-all it would be.
That's why these witches must be burned at the stake first.
He is John Fund. He's a columnist for National Review, nationalreview.com. Check out his piece on our friend Steve, who's afraid of Steve Moore, at nationalreview.com. As I said, John, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago